it'll be the 40th anniversary of Headquarters, which to me, I think that was a great garage band mid-'60s album that can sit alongside, Aftermath and Pet Sounds and
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm very, very proud of it.
Have you listened to the album recently?
Well, I tend to do a lot of songs from that album in my solo show, which I do. I go out and sing on the road. I do my little solo show, singing all the Monkey hits. But, the thing about Headquarters that was fascinating, now looking back, of course, in retrospect, is there was two monkey groups. One was the Monkeys that was on the television show that was cast by the producers, and they had songwriters writing the songs, and they had the Wrecking Crew. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Wrecking Crew, but I actually wrote an essay about that in this rock and roll trivia book also, because it's about time they got some credit. The Wrecking Crew was a group of studio musicians around at the time that everybody used, and very few people have owned up to it, but they played on the original Byrds records and the Beach Boys all the Beach Boys records, and they played on the Mamas and Papas and the Association. They played on everybody's records, because at the time you tended to bring in studio musicians, even if you could play, and of course all those people could, but you tended to bring in studio musicians because it's a different discipline in the studio. So when the Monkeys came along, of course, we were cast into the roles, and they had already recorded some of the tracks before they even cast us. And so there was this one Monkeys group. I kind of think of it as this one Monkeys group that was on the television show, the Imaginary Group, the one that lived in the beach house and had the imaginary adventures and were on the television show. And then along came Headquarters, and along came our kind of now world famous battle with the record people to get control of the music. And that's a different Monkeys group. That's the group you hear on Headquarters, which is, like you said, it's kind of a garage band, and it's not bad for a garage band.
No, I think there's some really first-rate. No Time, Early Morning Blues and Greens.
Well, some great stuff on that album. It's funny, because we did an album about 4 or 5 years ago called Just Us. Mike got back together, and we went in the studio and recorded this album. And just as a side note, we released the album, and to be honest, there was a lot of the hipwazi, I call them, who were like, the Monkeys, what are they trying to do, blah, blah, blah. And Mike sent out a bunch of unlabeled CDs of that album to a bunch of record radio stations and reviewers. And the unlabeled ones came back with great reviews about this new garage band. It's so funny.
That's weird. Any songs in particular that stick out for you on that album?
Well, the ones I wrote.
Randy sounds good.
Yeah, that was a huge hit in England. That was one of the biggest hits we had in England. That one of us wrote. That was about my experiences over there with the Beatles.
Was it fun making that album?
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah. It was a little, again, as a side note, after that we did that album, we'd all decided at that point to go off and make our own sort of solo solo endeavors. We decided, okay, now that we've done that, now Mike's going to go off and write and produce his own cuts, and I'm going to do the same, and David will do the same, and Peter would do the same. But Peter actually, was very disappointed. He said that was the greatest experience of his life doing that album, and he wanted to continue to do that. And when the general consensus was, no, we're going to go and kind of do our own solo things, that's when Peter quit the group, because, ultimately the Monkeys was 4 solo artists, essentially. 4 entirely separate solo singer-songwriter individuals who were cast into this, adventure. And that's not only unusual, but really difficult to contain. Most groups have one singer-songwriter, lead singer person that is the creative vision behind the group, and they get their friends, their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, or whoever to kind of come along for the ride. But most groups have 1, maybe 2 creative forces behind it. In the case of the Monkeys, of course, there was 4 very distinct creative forces, and that, of course, created a lot of excitement and interest, but also a lot of problems and conflicts.
If you could have magically, gone back, do you think maybe you or maybe one or two of the others may have agreed with Peter and said, well, maybe we should at least try another? I mean, Pisces, you guys still did do, a significant amount of music on it, but after that, that's whenever you guys kind of didn't do as much music.
Yeah, I think, the writing was sort of already on the wall. The television show had run its course, and we all thought and felt that we all could have solo individual careers, and of course, to some degree, we all have. But without the television show on the air, and let's face it, the Monkees was a TV show, essentially, about this imaginary group that lived in this imaginary beach house, like I said, and had these imaginary adventures. And the production company and the record company and the TV company, they were kind of driving the train, so to speak. And when the show went off the air, of course, essentially the Monkees no longer existed. And I've often said, the Monkees was not a group. It was a cast of a television show about a group, an imaginary group. And when the show went off the air, did you ever see Galaxy Quest?
Yeah.
The Tim Allen movie about the Star Trek cast of the show. And well, that's what happened to the Monkees. It was this show about this imaginary group, and then one day the aliens, or the fans, said, we want you to be real. And we were. And we went on the road, and we did hundreds of concerts. As you've heard the story, Jimi Hendrix was our opening act. And we became this real group. Like Pinocchio, all of a sudden becoming a real little boy. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Funny you mentioned talking about the show the other night. I caught a rerun.
I have, I remember little glimpses, moments. It was all, to me, it was like one, long show because we just filmed continuously for months. So I have little snatches of memory here and there. Of some of the episodes. I tend to remember some of the people that the guest stars that were on the show, but it was like like I said before, it was like a Marx Brothers movie, and it was much more like the Marx Brothers than the Beatles. If you really look at it and analyze it, and it actually was John Lennon that made that first comparison. When asked years ago, what do you think about the Monkees? He said, I like them. They're like the Marx Brothers. A terrible John Lennon accent, but.
No, that's cool. Well, anything else we didn't go over? Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm thrilled. Thank you so much for your interest. I'm going to be doing Pippin now till the beginning of the year, then I'm going to go home. I have an invention coming out next year. You'll see it on infomercials called Hang It All, the household tool that I've invented. And besides that, I'm writing another children's book. The book company, Penguin, has already commissioned my second book.
Cool.
Another seminal moment in human evolution. And besides that, who knows? I never know kind of what I'm going to do one day to the next.
Cool. Well, as always, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. You've been a friend of mine for a long, long time, and you didn't even know it way back when.
I appreciate it.
And let's do this again next year. We'll talk about your new invention, or if you got another tour or something else going on in 2007.
Okay, buddy.
Have a great Christmas and New Year, and let's touch base in 2007.
Thanks, John.
Take care.